Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
I'd like to, today's learning has been sponsored by Barry Steinberg in memory of the yard site of his aunt, Shifra Bas Shraga Faivel, whose yard site is today, Neshama Shav and Aliyah. And also, a week's learning has been sponsored by Harold Shoshana Zazula in honor of the yard in honor of the yard sites of Harold's paternal grandparents, Tzvi ben Meir HaKoyin and Chaya Bas Dov, and Neshama Shav Aliyah. We learn Mishna Yisbeitza, Parakeh, chapter 5, Mishnah Hey, Mishnah 5. Okay, so we have been learning until now discussion about Tchum Shabbos, where there is a limit to how far you can go on Shabbos outside of what's called your residence. And, excuse me, we have been learning how this limit of how far you can go doesn't just apply to yourself, but also applies to your possessions, to your objects. So now Mishnah Hey says like this, Hagacheles, if you have a burning coal, Karagle Ba'alim, that follows the feet of the owner. That means it goes as far as the owner can go. And the owner, as we have been saying until now, is where this coal has been, and basically under whose usage it's been when Yontif began. That is going to determine how far it can be taken on Shabbos. And as we said, let's say the owner is limited, it has his limit goes up to a certain point, but now you who want to, let's say, take that coal and use it somewhere, you want to go ahead and take it further because you made a Erev Tchumen, and therefore you can go further. But you can't go further because the object follows its owner, unless you already had, so to speak, borrowed that burning coal before Yontif. Now, so the Gacheles Kragle Ba'alim, a burning coal is like the feet of the owner. It can go as far as where the owner can go. V'shal heves b'chol makaim, but the flame can go anywhere. That means if you have a burning coal and you light a candle by that flame, so what did you take from that person? The flame. A flame doesn't have any kind of substance to it to say that it's going to determine how far it can go. So even though the flame was part of someone else's object, the flame was by him when Yontif began, but nonetheless, if you light that flame on Yontif, which you can, and you now want to take that flame further than what the original owner could take it, you could, because being that a flame doesn't have any kind of substance, therefore it is not limited to what the original owner doesn't have to follow what the original only as far as what the original owner can do. Okay, now the next halach again applies to a distinction between a burning coal and a flame. Gacheles shel hekdesh. Let's say you have a coal that is sanctified. It came from the altar of the Beis Hamikdash, or let's say you sanctified it for usage by the Beis Hamikdash. It became sanctified object. You're not allowed personal benefit from it. If you do have any kind of personal benefit from it, that's called mi'ila. Mi'ila means having personal benefit from an object that is consecrated to the Beis Hamikdash. If you do use that unintentionally, you have to bring what's called a carbon mi'ila. You also have to go ahead. The halacha is you also have to go ahead and one who commits me'ila, let me just read to you from the bottom. One who commits me'ila, that means they had personal use out of an object of hektish, must pay the Beis Hamikdash the monetary value of the benefit he gained, plus 1/4 as a fine. And you must bring an asham offering. Now, yeah, the asham, these are talking about he does it unintentionally. But the bottom line is that you go ahead and you benefited from this coal of the Beis Hamikdash. You warmed yourself by it. You cooked something by it. You lit something off of it. That's going to be considered. You benefited from it. You're not going to do that. The shal heves, but the flame of that coal, you may not have benefit from it, but there is no meal if you do so. Meaning, again, essentially, the shal heves has no substance. It doesn't have all the laws of the object itself. It doesn't carry those laws. It really isn't on its own something sanctified that you can't benefit from. However, the Chacham, the sages said, we still don't want you benefiting from it. Anything that has connected to hektish, we don't want you having any kind of personal benefit from. So you can't have any personal benefit from the flame. You can't light a candle by that flame. But if you did so, And if you did so, you won't be, so you can't light the candle by the flame, midrabanan contra rabbinic law. However, if you did, there's no liability of me'ilah because essentially the Torah's law of me'ilah, the prohibition of me'ilah doesn't apply to the flame because it has no substance. Just that the sages said, we don't want you benefiting even from that, so you don't come to benefit from other objects that belong to Hektish. So that's the second halach in the Mishnah. Next case. If you take out a burning coal into a public domain on Shabbos, you took it out of your house into a public domain, took it out, you're liable for it. You have transgressed the prohibition of transferring from a private domain to a public domain. V'shal heves pater. But let's say what you did was you transferred the flame, meaning what you did was you fanned the flame that was in a private domain, making it move into public domain. You gave it you fanned it, so the flame jumped into the Rishus Harabim. So you're not liable for doing that, for transferring an object from a private domain to a public domain. Because again, the shaleves has no substance to be considered that you've done anything. Now, back to the laws that regarding Tchum Shabbos. Bar Shal Yachid, you have a private well. It's owned by a private person. Karag LeHaYachid. Then it follows the feet of the individual owner. Even though he lets you take water from there on Yontif, because you're taking it on Yontif. Therefore, we say it can only go as far as the owner could go. Now, let's say the well belongs to the town. So then we say, that it follows the feet of the people of that city, right? The town has its limits. 2,000 cubits outside of its boundary is going to be considered Tchum Shabbos. And we say that if there's a well that was dug by the townspeople, you can only take that water as far as they can go. Even if, let's say, you made an Erev Tchumin that says you can go further, nonetheless, you can only take it as far as it goes because the water is considered the water of the town. But let's say we're talking about the wells of the people who went up from Bavel. When people would go up to Yerushalayim on Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, they needed water to drink. And there were wells that were dug for them. Those wells that were dug for them, the water in there was hefker. It was really ownerless. Anybody can drink from there. So therefore we say, the water that belongs to those who came up from Bavel, meaning those public, it's not a town well. It's basically it's considered hefker. It's considered ownerless. It's not the town one is considered belonging to the town, but these that were specifically dug for those people who were traveling up to Yerushalayim, those waters were considered hefker, ownerless, and therefore karagli amamale. Therefore, they follow how far the person who's filling it up can go. As far as he can go, that's how far the water can go. We don't consider any kind of owner on it to say it's limited to the owner. It's hefker, it's ownerless, and therefore, whoever basically claims the water, that's how far. Or whatever claims the water, meaning whatever water they fill up is going to follow according to how far they can go regarding the Tchum on Yontif. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.